It was a perfectly ordinary Thursday evening in November when my life fell apart. I, Thomas Weber, 31 years old and successful manager of a marketing agency in Munich, came home earlier than usual. The important client meeting had been unexpectedly canceled, and I was looking forward to surprising my wife Sarah with a spontaneous evening together. Our apartment on the third floor of a renovated historic building was quiet and dark. Sarah had sent me a message saying she was still at yoga. Nothing unusual for a Thursday. I made myself comfortable on the couch and reached for her tablet to check some work emails, since my phone battery was almost dead. When I unlocked the tablet, the messenger automatically opened. My eyes fell on a chat with Michael, my best friend since university days and now also my business partner in the agency. What I read made my blood freeze in my veins. Missing you already. Last night was incredible. Read a message from Sarah. Can we meet again tomorrow? Thomas has an important client meeting, Michael replied. Yes, I'll tell him I'm going to yoga again. The same hotel as always? With trembling hands, I scrolled through the chat history. Hundreds of messages, intimate photos, appointments, all perfectly disguised under the cover of overtime and yoga classes. The affair seemed to have been going on for months. I sat there numbed while my stomach tied itself in knots. Memories of recent months raced through my head. Michael's frequent overtime at the agency, Sarah's sudden enthusiasm for yoga, the business dinners where the two had seemed so familiar with each other. The sound of a key in the apartment door snapped me out of my paralysis. Sarah came in, wearing her yoga clothes, with flushed cheeks and damp hair. She froze when she saw me with her tablet. Thomas, you're home already? Her voice trembled slightly. I turned the tablet toward her, the chat history clearly visible on the display. How long has this been going on with Michael? The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, closed it again, tears welling up in her eyes. But I felt no sympathy anymore. At that moment, I realized that our 5-year relationship, including 2 years of marriage, had been built on a lie. What I didn't know yet. This was just the beginning of a series of revelations that would fundamentally change my life. The next few minutes in our apartment were filled with a crushing silence. Sarah still stood in the hallway. Her yoga bag had slipped from her shoulder and lay forgotten on the floor. I sat petrified on the couch, the tablet with its betraying messages between us like an invisible wall. It's not what you think, Sarah began with a trembling voice. A phrase so cliché that I had to laugh bitterly. Oh really? Then please explain how else I should understand these messages between you and my best friend? The photos? The secret hotel meetings? My voice grew louder with each word. Sarah sank into an armchair across from me. It happened about 6 months ago, after the company party in May. Michael and we were both drunk and… Spare me the details. I cut her off sharply. 6 months? You've both been lying to me for half a year? Both smiling at me every day, working with me, eating, sleeping, while behind my back. Suddenly something occurred to me. Wait a minute, the company party in May? Weren't you? I faltered as a terrible suspicion formed in my mind. Sarah began to cry. I wanted to tell you for a while now, Thomas. I'm pregnant. The words hit me like a blow. 3 weeks ago she had announced the happy news. We had celebrated, made plans, thought about names. Whose child is it? I asked tonelessly, though I already suspected the answer. I'm not sure, she whispered. The timing could match both. At that moment my phone rang. Michael's name lit up on the display. Of course, Sarah had probably already sent him a message. Answer it, I said coldly. Put it on speaker. It's time for a conversation among friends. With trembling fingers, Sarah answered the call. Michael's voice filled the room. Sarah? Is everything okay? What happened? Thomas knows, she managed to say. He found the messages. A long pause followed. Then, I'm coming over right now. Yes, I said loudly. You should, and bring your resignation with you. Because starting tomorrow, there's no place for you in my company anymore. The next 2 hours would become the most painful of my life, a confrontation that changed everything and left no one unscathed. The doorbell rang 30 minutes later. Michael stood in the stairwell, his usually confident demeanor replaced by visible nervousness. As he entered the apartment, which we had so often filled with barbecue and game nights, there was an eerie atmosphere. "Thomas, he began, but I just raised my hand. "Save the apologies. Sit down." My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "We have some things to sort out." Michael sat down next to Sarah on the sofa, an unconscious gesture that felt like another stab in my back. I stood by the window, my back to the wall, as if defending myself against invisible attackers. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked. "The future together? The child?" Michael turned pale. "The child? What child?" "Oh," I laughed bitterly. "Sarah hasn't told you yet. She's pregnant. Congratulations. You might be the father." The next few minutes passed in a chaos of accusations, tears, and confessions. It turned out their affair wasn't just a physical relationship. They had developed feelings for each other. Michael had even considered selling his share of our joint company to start fresh with Sarah. They had already been looking for apartments while I was obliviously researching nursery furniture online. "The company," I said tonelessly. "Our clients? Our team? Did you think about that, Michael?" "I wanted to explain everything to you gradually," he stammered. "Offer you fair compensation." "Fair compensation?" My voice grew louder. "For the betrayal of my wife and best friend? For a child that might be yours? For years of friendship that meant nothing?" Sarah sobbed quietly. "We're so sorry, Thomas. We never meant to hurt you." "But you did!" I slammed my fist against the wall. The physical pain was a welcome distraction from the emotional agony. At that moment, Michael's phone rang. It was Mr. Weber, our most important client. Michael wanted to ignore the call, but I insisted he answer it. With a trembling voice, he tried to sound professional while I stood nearby, watching our jointly built life lying in ruins. After the call, silence fell. Then I said quietly, "I'm moving out tonight. Sarah, you can keep the apartment. Michael, your resignation letter will be on your desk tomorrow morning. I expect your office cleared by the end of the week." "Thomas, please." Michael tried again. "Let's talk about this." "The company." "I own the majority of the company," I interrupted coldly. "You only have 30% of the shares. I'll have an offer made for your shares. Take it, or I'll make sure everyone in the industry knows how you treat business partners." I went to the bedroom and started packing a bag. Behind me, I could hear Sarah crying and Michael trying to comfort her. It was surreal, like watching a bad movie in which I was unwillingly playing the lead role. An hour later, I left the apartment. In the elevator going down, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from my parents. Sarah had apparently already written to them. I didn't even read the message from my mother. I booked a room at a hotel downtown. As I looked out from the 14th floor at the illuminated city, I realized this was the end of my old life. But it would also have to be the beginning of something new. The next few weeks blurred into a fog of lawyer meetings, sleepless nights, and desperate attempts to keep the company running. As I had feared, Michael took some of our main clients with him when he left. Long-standing business relationships, built on trust, shattered like thin ice. I rented a small 2-room apartment on the outskirts of the city, far from our old neighborhood. The bare walls and smell of fresh paint were strangely comforting. There were no memories here, no ghosts of the past. On a rainy Tuesday morning, 3 months after the separation, I sat in my office staring at resignation letters from 2 more employees. The company was teetering on the edge of ruin. Then my phone rang. Emma Weber, our creative director and one of the few who had remained loyal. "Thomas, I have an idea," she said without preamble. "What do you think about completely repositioning ourselves, moving away from classic marketing towards digital solutions for startups?" I leaned back. "Startups? They don't have any budget. But they have potential," Emma replied enthusiastically. "And they're looking for partners who will grow with them. The old clients are gone? Then let's find new, hungry clients." As she spoke, something began to form in my mind. A vision of something new, fresh. Something that would belong only to me. "Come to my office," I said. "Bring coffee. Lots of coffee." We spent the next 12 hours reinventing the company. Weber, Partner Marketing GmbH, became Digital Future Solutions. We developed new service packages, specifically tailored for young companies. Emma activated her network in the startup scene. I sold my car and some of my stocks to finance the restructuring. 2 weeks later, we presented our new concept to our first potential client, a promising fintech startup. When the CEO enthusiastically signed the contract, I felt something like hope for the first time in months. That evening, instead of going straight home as usual, I went to a bar near the office. There, I coincidentally met Julia, a former client from my time with Michael. She had heard about the changes and had become curious. "You know," she said after our third drink, "sometimes it takes a complete breakdown for something better to emerge." I looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I smiled genuinely. "Yes," I said, "maybe you're right." What I didn't know then, Julia's words would prove prophetic, not just for my business, but for my personal life as well. A year had passed since that night that changed my life. Digital Future Solutions had made a name for itself in the startup scene. The two-person team had grown to 15 employees, and we were already looking for larger office space. One Thursday morning, I read a small note in the business newspaper that caught my attention. Weber, partner marketing files for bankruptcy. Built with my former clients, had failed. I put the newspaper aside and took a sip of coffee when my phone vibrated. "Thomas?" Sarah's voice sounded different from my memory. Tired, desperate. "Can we meet? It's important." I hesitated. Little Leon, her and Michael's son, had been born 8 months ago. The DNA test had eliminated all doubts. It was Michael's child. The divorce was now final. "Sarah, I don't think that's a good idea." "Please," her voice broke. "Michael, he's lost everything. The company is bankrupt. The clients are gone. He's drinking, becoming aggressive. I'm scared for Leon." A certain satisfaction spread through me, followed by shame for these feelings. What do you expect from me? A job? Anything? He can't find work anymore in the industry. Your name still carries weight. I laughed bitterly. My name? The same name you both dragged through the mud? At that moment, there was a knock on my office door. Julia entered, no longer just a client but now my partner, both in business and in life. She looked at me questioningly, noticing my tension. "Sarah," I said calmly into the phone, "I can't and won't help you. Live with the consequences." "But Leon," she began. "Is Michael's son," I interrupted harshly. "Not mine. I wish you all the best." I hung up and looked at Julia. She came over and put her hands on my shoulders. "The past?" I nodded. "They need help. Michael's company is bankrupt." "And what are you going to do?" I stood up and walked to the window. Below on the street, I saw a man teaching a little boy to ride a bicycle. The boy fell, got up, tried again. "Nothing," I finally said. "Absolutely nothing. Sometimes you just have to get back up and try again on your own." Julia smiled and kissed me on the cheek. "Come on, we have the meeting with the new tech startup in 10 minutes. As we left the office, I felt lighter. The revenge I had longed for had come on its own. And it didn't even taste sweet. It was just another page I could turn. 2 years after that fateful night, I stood at the window of my new office on the 15th floor of a glass tower downtown. Digital Future Solutions had become one of the city's leading digital marketing companies, with over 50 employees and an impressive portfolio of successful startups. Julie and I had married 3 months ago, a small, intimate celebration with only our closest friends and family. Emma had been my best woman. The honeymoon to New Zealand was still ahead of us. That morning, I had received an email from my mother. Sarah and Michael had moved away from the city, somewhere to the countryside. Michael now worked as an office supplies salesman, Sarah in a small copy shop. Little Leon was now 3 years old. "They still ask about you," my mother wrote, "whether you might give them another chance." I deleted the email without responding. There was nothing left to say. "Thomas?" Julia stood in the doorway, one hand on her slightly rounded belly. "Our little surprise, due to arrive in 6 months. The team is waiting in the conference room. We're about to present the new concept for the Silicon Valley client." I smiled at her. "Remember what you told me that day in the bar? About complete breakdown and how something better can emerge from it." She came over and took my hand. "Yes? And? Was I right?" I pulled her close. and kissed her softly. More than you know. In the conference room, our team waited, motivated, talented people who believed in our vision. Emma winked at me as I entered the room. She had recently received her promotion to co-managing director. As I began our presentation, my thoughts briefly drifted. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. I had been wrong. It had just begun. Sometimes, I told my team, we need to lose everything to recognize what we can truly gain. The real satisfaction wasn't in Michael and Sarah's struggles while I succeeded. It was in finally understanding that their betrayal hadn't destroyed me, it had freed me. As I drove home that evening, it was drizzling lightly. I stopped at a red light and happened to glance at a copy shop across the street. For a moment, I thought I saw Sarah there, but it was just a passing resemblance. The light turned green, and I drove on, home to Julia, to our shared life, to our future. And for the first time in a long while, I was grateful for every single pain that had led me here.